What would a second Trump presidency look like? One possible vision is laid out in Project 2025, a plan by the Heritage Foundation that is ringing alarm bells among celebrities, activists, and the Biden administration. Project 2025 aims to transform the federal government, but what vision does it lay out for the future of the US democracy? Voters in recent weeks are hearing Project 2025 being invoked more and more by President Biden and the Democrats as they seek to sound the alarm about what could be in store if former President Donald Trump wins a second term in the White House. Trump and his campaign have worked to distance themselves from Project 2025, with the former president going so far as to call some of the proposals abysmal. But Democrats have continued to tie the transition project to Trump, especially as they find themselves mired in their own controversy over whether Biden should withdraw from the 2024 presidential contest after his startling debate performance last month. Project 2025 is a proposed presidential transition project that is composed of 4 pillars: a policy guide for the next presidential administration, a LinkedIn-style database of personnel who could serve in the next administration, training for that pool of candidates dubbed the Presidential Administration Academy, and a playbook of actions to be taken within the first 180 days in office. It is led by 2 former Trump administration officials, Paul Dans, who was Chief of Staff at the Office of Personnel Management and serves as Director of the project, and Spencer Chrétien, former Special Assistant to Trump, and now the project's Associate Director. Project 2025 is spearheaded by the Heritage Foundation, but includes an advisory board consisting of more than 100 conservative groups. Much of the focus on and criticism of Project 2025 involves its first pillar, called Mandate for Leadership 2025, The Conservative Promise. The book builds on a mandate for leadership first published in January 1981, which sought to serve as a roadmap for Ronald Reagan's incoming administration. The recommendations outlined in the sprawling plan reach every corner of the executive branch, from the Executive Office of the President to the Department of Homeland Security to the little-known Export-Import Bank. The contributions from ex-Trump administration officials have led its critics to tie Project 2025 to his re-election campaign, though the former president has attempted to distance himself from the initiative. Some of the policies in the Project 2025 agenda have been discussed by Republicans for years or pushed by Trump himself. These include less federal intervention in education and more support for school choice, work requirements for able-bodied and childless adults on food stamps, and a secure border with increased enforcement of immigration laws, mass deportations, and construction of a border wall. However, others have come under scrutiny in part because of the current political landscape. In recommendations for the Department of Health and Human Services, the agenda calls for the Food and Drug Administration to reverse its 24-year-old approval of the widely used abortion pill mifepristone. Other proposed actions targeting medication abortion include reinstating more stringent rules for mifepristone's use, which would permit it to be taken up to 7 weeks into a pregnancy instead of the current 10 weeks, and requiring it to be dispensed in person instead of through the mail. The agenda takes aim at long-standing federal agencies like the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. The agency is a component of the Commerce Department, and the policy guide calls for it to be downsized. The guide states NOAA's 6 offices, including the National Weather Service and National Marine Fisheries Service, form a colossal operation that has become one of the main drivers of the climate change alarm industry, and, as such, is harmful to future US prosperity. The policy book states the Department of Homeland Security, established in 2002, should be dismantled and its agencies either combined with others or moved under the purview of other departments altogether. If the policy recommendations are implemented, another federal agency that could come under the knife by the next administration, with action from Congress, is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Trump made immigration a cornerstone of his last 2 presidential runs and has continued to hammer the issue during his 2024 campaign. Project 2025's agenda not only recommends finishing the wall along the US-Mexico border, but urges the next administration to take a creative and aggressive approach to responding to drug cartels at the border. This approach includes using active duty military personnel and the National Guard to help with arrest operations along the southern border. The policy guide states a memo from Immigration and Customs Enforcement that prohibits enforcement actions from taking place at sensitive places like schools, playgrounds, and churches should be rolled back. In a post to his social media platform on July 5th, Trump wrote, "I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who is behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. I wish them luck, but I have nothing to do with them." Trump's pushback to the initiative came after Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts said in a podcast interview that the nation is in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be. But even before Roberts' comments during the War Room podcast, typically hosted by conservative commentator Steve Bannon, who reported to federal prison to begin serving a 4-month sentence last week, Trump's top campaign advisors have stressed that Project 2025 has no official ties to his re-election bid. Susie Wiles and Chris Licivita, senior advisors to the Trump campaign, said in a November statement that 2024 policy announcements will be made by Trump or his campaign team. While the efforts by outside organizations are appreciated, Wiles and Licivita said, none of these groups or individuals speak for President Trump or his campaign. In response to Trump's post last week, Project 2025 reiterated that it was separate from the Trump campaign. A statement on the Project's X account said, "As we've been saying for more than 2 years now, Project 2025 does not speak for any candidate or campaign. We are a coalition of more than 110 conservative groups advocating policy and personnel recommendations for the next conservative president. But it is ultimately up to that president, who we believe will be President Trump, to decide which recommendations to implement." Despite their attempts to keep some distance from Project 2025, Democrats continue to connect Trump with the transition effort. The Biden-Harris campaign frequently posts about the project on X, tying it to a second Trump term. Biden himself accused his Republican opponent of lying about his connections to the Project 2025 agenda, saying in a statement that the agenda was written for Trump and should scare every single American. Congressional Democrats have also begun pivoting to Project 2025 when asked in interviews about Biden's fitness for a second term following his lackluster showing at the June 27th debate, the first in which he went head-to-head with Trump. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris alleged that Trump's advisors have created a 900-page blueprint that they are calling Project 2025, detailing everything else they plan to do in a second term, including a plan to cut Social Security, repeal the USD35 cap on insulin, eliminate the Department of Education, and end programs like Head Start. Trump, if elected as U.S. president, would turn the American democracy into a dictatorship, Harris said in Las Vegas on July 9th.
Then President Donald Trump handpicked 3 members of the United States Supreme Court, the court of Thurgood, because he intended for them to overturn Roe v. Wade, and as he intended, they did. And there is so much at stake in this moment, including last week, when the Supreme Court basically told this individual, who has been convicted of fraud, that going forward he will be immune for activity we know he is prepared to engage in if he gets back into the White House. Consider, Donald Trump has openly vowed, if re-elected, he'll be a dictator on day one. That he will weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies, round up peaceful protesters and throw them out of our country, and even, and I quote, terminate the United States Constitution. What's more, Trump advisors have created a 900-page blueprint of their agenda for the second term. They call it Project 2025.
Two GOP senators under consideration to serve as Trump's running mates sought to put space between the White House hopeful and Project 2025, casting it as merely the product of a think tank that puts forth ideas. Florida Senator Marco Rubio told CNN State of the Union that it's the work of a think tank, of a center-right think tank, and that's what think tanks do. Rubio said Trump's message to voters focuses on restoring common sense, working-class values, and making our decisions on the basis of that. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance raised a similar sentiment in an interview with NBC's Meet the Press, saying organizations will have good ideas and bad ideas. Vance said, "It's a 900-page document. I guarantee there are things that Trump likes and dislikes about that 900-page document, but he is the person who will determine the agenda of the next administration.